Okay, we started recording. This is our interest-based bargaining, and we are in session. We're going to bring up our agenda. Trustee Grissom texted that she's going to be a few minutes late. So, and Brian Wall's not here yet. So, first thing on the agenda is, I'm going to just remind everybody our mission of the Lakeland Joint School District is to maximize student learning and ensure every learner is growing academically, social, emotionally, behaviorally, every day in all environments. So we pick up those sweet cherubs from when we pick them up in the morning till we drop them back off to their parents at night. Word for word. Okay?
We have to keep like movie tables. Mm-hmm.
So here's our members for this year, and Rebecca. Do we have the microphone set up, Rebecca? I'm not sure why this is.
It's just the round disc, Rebecca, and there's a cord like it.
Okay, who would like to read our IBB team's why?
By working together with authenticity and transparency as one cohesive unit, staff, students, parents, and community, we will protect our students, make a positive impact on the lives of others, ensure fiscal responsibility to our taxpayers, support students in finding their passions and talents, providing them foundational skills to be contributing members of society, to their passions and talents, ground ourselves in what is best for students, create a win-win environment, have a united front, make decisions that are aligned with short and long-term goals, interact respectfully, and be willing to address all issues. I've been practicing fluency with my second graders.
Thank you.
We've improved a lot.
Okay, let's do popcorn for our ground rules. Bob, would you read the first one, and we'll just go around in a circle and each read one.
I'm a mouthful.
Okay.
Concealed honesty, integrity, realism, trust, accuracy, respect, and humor.
Good humor you had in there.
Provide open communication and an effort to work towards common understanding.
Enter the process with a clean slate and fresh start.
Assure commitment to the process and to the team.
Listen to one person at a time, no speaking out of turn.
Do not take things personally. When a decision is made, support the decision.
Begin and end the meeting on time.
Stay on topic.
Monitor your talk time so all voices are able to be heard.
Sorry about that. Okay, then we'll come back to the standards and the process. As resources, we have our last year's negotiated agreement. This is our working copy. Did we get it so that everyone has rights to that?
I was able to type into it.
Okay, I think I did. If not, if you cannot get into this with editing rights, can you please let Rebecca know, because she'll fix it right now. And then in these IBB notes, this actually needs to say minutes.
Okay.
Because Rebecca's taking the official minutes, and they have to be posted on the website. So our official minutes will be posted on the website. If anyone wants to, I will, after she finishes those tomorrow, like she'll get them done by the next day. She'll email them to all of us to make sure they're accurate, and then we'll post them to the website after that. We aren't gonna wait till the next meeting and do an motion and all that.
Yep.
Okay? Okay, last time?
Can we go back to the working copy of the NA, because there was language that I put in for that I need.
Okay.
Feedback on.
What page is it?
It's that, click on that 1, 2, F.
This right here?
Yep. Sorry.
The 1, 2, my password is 23.82B.
So what's highlighted in that pretty neon and blue is all new language based on the notes from the last meeting. make sure it accurately captured what we
I believe so.
said.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you.
So do we have to approve the?
Any discussion on this?
Can I get a brief reminder? The reason we pay March through August is we don't get the document from the state until just before that for who qualifies. Is that correct? That's
February.
that delay that teachers, many class or certified staff ask about. Why isn't it lump sum or 1/12? And it's about that document, which is a February document. Is that true? Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about that? Okay, so, Trustee Grissom, did you get a chance to read that?
I did, yes,
Okay.
I'm fine this time, thank
Okay.
you.
So, all those in favor, thumbs up, if you wanna still talk about it sideways. Okay, everyone's thumbs up. Thank you for doing that, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Where would we like to start, people? Where does people wanna start?
Didn't we have another one on the board that we were working on?
Yeah, we had a couple of issues that
Can
had
I go
to
back to
agree.
these minutes? Let's go back to the minutes, cause it was a week ago.
Pictures Rebecca took are not moving, so.
I think we had the extracurricular and special ed. Or the.
I think they're further down, Lisa.
I found it. Thank you.
So we did this eight payout, we just did that with Lisa. Extracurricular,
So that's kind of, I think that's where we need to extracurricular.
Well, one of the two, I think, yeah, we left there, and then with the,
so do you want me to bring up the emails that you sent, or what would you like to do next?
yeah, if that's where the group wants to go, I'm fine with it. I can share what I put together. Or we can finish with the payout for the
SWD?
SWD.
Okay, where would you guys like to start? We have we're doing the SWD drop days and we had brainstorms. And then, or we had the extracurricular and Jason had some follow-up data that he collected.
Let's go with extracurricular for 200. I feel like we're in a Jeopardy, like, we gotta make a call, I'll buzz in.
It's gonna be a little more than 200.
Maybe 2,000.
I'm gonna bring a buzzer next week.
The easy one.
So that was the cost. And then this is the spreadsheet. So I went back and, I don't know, maybe if everyone wants to look on the board or if we share it with everybody, but I went back and gathered all our notes from everybody from our committee. So, and just so the group knows, so coaching has been, when to add coaches has been an ongoing district issue every year, all year long, depending on the season. And Becky and I, Brooke and Lisa, the whole team has been, seems like every year we're trying to decide, have to involve Brian as well. When do we allow a new coach? And AD will email Becky saying, hey, we're being asked to hire a new coach. We have this many students, and trying to find the protocol for what we have. It's been a history of, nothing really written down and no protocol and things like that. So Becky asked me earlier in the year if I would put a committee together, a good sample of people together to work on this extracurricular stuff. And so we met a time or two. We had Lisa Sexton was there, and we had both ADs there. We had coaches there. We had some regular staff members there. Great sample of people. I believe there were 20 people altogether that were there. So anyway, with that said, I brought this to the table this last week, what that group came up with, and then there were some questions as far as like facts, what do other schools have, what's being compared, things like that. And so I went back and got all the information that I had and then did a little extra research as well. And so I have all of our neighboring districts within the same category, classifications 5A, 4A, and 3A. believe I did now get all the 3A because they have since lost a couple of schools. And then I also called down south, and you guys will be interested to see the South's numbers compared to our numbers. Pretty interesting. So what I've done is I've put all of our sport categories that we have compared to the other districts, and this is what I found out. So Coeur d'Alene is a 5A school. Their goal, especially in football, that's kind of where it started from with them. It's roughly a 9-1. It doesn't follow suit with all the other sports per se, but that's their goal, and it's certainly that way in football. And they also have a head coach, a varsity assistant, and then a head for JV and C at least in every one of those categories, except for golf. Coeur d'Alene's kind of a funny situation. When I was talking to those people over there, they say, yeah, golf's not very big over here in Coeur d'Alene for some reason. And so they don't really have.
Vikings, they keep winning.
Huh?
They keep winning.
Well, their varsity is very good, but they don't have, they're just saying that, they have a consistent numbers, and so they just need one coach, and they go out and they do their thing and go from there. So then I went down to Lake City, being in the same district, they're pretty much the same. Their ratio is a little bit different, 9-1, or I believe that ratio is the same. Yeah, all the way through, yeah. But they have an assistant for golf at Lake City. Lewiston, you can go through there. They're an 8-1 program on their football squad. Again, they have a head coach, varsity assistant for every one of their programs, head coach, JV and C, at least. Now it's just kind of interesting. You learn a lot when you talk to ADs and you look at, negotiated agreements and things like that, because a lot of the numbers aren't even there. Things are kind of skeptical, and it's almost like who you talk to on any given day, but I was able to get some information out of Moscow. Basically was, in my comments there is no ratio. They have we've always done it that way attitude. They've had a ton of changeover in coaches and ADs with just about every program. But again, he told me that the new AD, his name is Abendrop, and he told me that their goal is to have head coach and varsity assistant, and they pretty much have that throughout, as you can.
Look at their track.
As I say, track's the one that keeps standing out to me, is that we're.
We have 9,
Baby in Moscow, that
8,
guy is
10,
brutal.
5.
Yeah, so.
6.
Now Sam pointed out, I kind of laugh at all this too. Good luck with this one, Dr. Meyer. But no, but they were pretty adamant they didn't want to really share much numbers with me, because I think they, like in their football program, they brought in quite a few people, and you can see their one, one coach, 14 assistants. Right now is what they're getting paid.
We're lucky if we have 14 kids.
They did go to state last year.
Yeah, well, and it's
That's where you put your
football in Sandpoint right now is
Lot of
pretty
curves.
big. They like their head coach, they like their program, their youth coming in, they're doing some good things. But the biggest thing there is it's hard to nail down on what is the district is actually paying for those coaches and what are being split stipends and fundraised. And so I couldn't really get too many numbers for sure, but this is the best that we have to talk about that. But they are pretty comparable, except for, I would say, football. And then we go down to 3A Bonners Ferry. They told me straight up, no ratio, we take it case by case. Right now they have one head football coach with 7 assistants, 1-1 wrestling, 1-2 basketball.
But look, it's still 5 for track,
And then they
because
have
of the
5.
number of events, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why you see it with track that you have more, is just because there's so many more skilled events, and honestly football too. I mean, football, you don't just have offense and defense, but there's many different skills within those categories that you have to coach, and with the amount of kids that are there, you have to break them up under skill level and position.
Yeah, I can see where they would have to have, like in some instances, case this year where we had just a ton of new golfers who haven't even swung a club, and, you know, to have one coach trying to, you know, show them just the fundamentals of it, and then trying to release the other kids and afraid that they're gonna tear up the golf course.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
that's one coach can't possibly do that.
And then we go down south. So I talked to a buddy of mine that's the principal of CUNA down there, and he gave me these numbers. And in fact, their numbers, their overall school enrollment hasn't changed much, but they've been 4A up until this last year, and then they were forced to move up to 5A. But all of their numbers are, when you look at their football, I mean, they're about a 7-to-1 ratio with
Well,
the
look
numbers
at
they've had.
wrestling.
Wrestling, they're a huge wrestling school. They would always do very well in wrestling. So how they got those, you know, and they get the same amount of money as everybody else. But again, I think there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, you know, going on.
1-1. And look at the wrestling, even for Moscow, 4, 3, 3, 1 and 3. Interesting.
Yeah.
5.
And I'm sorry, I know it's scrolling down,
No,
and
it's
it's
good.
hard to compare when you have to keep scrolling back up and down. But
No, it's
then
good.
Ridgeview is a brand new school. Valley View was a huge 5A school that was reaching was reaching over 2,000 kids, and so they ended up splitting. And Ridgeview is the one school that split from Valley View, that came away from Valley View. Brand new school, and you can see, I mean, they're in our level. They're at a 9-to-1 football ratio. Again, they do lots of fundraising to help pay for coaches and things like that. I did talk to our athletic directors, and they just had an athletic director conference, an activities director conference, and they started saying, so a lot of these schools have been trying to find ways as far as extra fundraising to pay for coaches and things like that, but Title IX right now is coming up quite a bit, and they were saying that they're really going to start looking at athletic programs, activities programs, to make sure Title IX is being followed. And if that's the case, then a lot of this fundraising stuff to pay for coaches, if it's not the same across the board for every sport, and both boys and girls, that stuff's going to be, they're going to start cracking down on that, and it'll go away. So it'll be interesting to see how some of these numbers change. So that's that information that you have. So I just kind of thought it'd be a good comparison to see what our neighboring districts are doing and other people in our state. If we approve our proposal that the committee came up with, that Dr. Meyer asked us to put together, we would have to hire 7 new coaches.
7.
We have multiple sports that don't have an assistant at the head coach level.
Yeah, and so
But we've
basically
never given
it
it
would
to
put in all of our so you have basketball coaches, soccer,
Wrestling,
you're wrestling for both schools.
basketball twice, both boys and girls.
And so I asked Brian how to come up with, a roundabout number for the district or for us to look at for that, and he says, well, just take the median number in our salary schedule, because you're going to have people coming in at all different levels from that, whether it's year 1 or year 10. And so I did that, and with the 7 new coaches hired, it would be a district cost of about $34,000 and change.
If you can find the coaches.
If you can, and I'm glad you brought that up. So we also had a question, and I don't know, Becky, if you can.
Just let me write this down just real quick. Must be this board.
She was making fun of me today, it was like,
Is there like a delay or something?
Yeah. She kept doing that. Okay, there's those 2 docs. Where do you want me to go?
Go to the cost real quick so everyone can see that. That's the last thing that so there's how we came up with it. So the median in our extracurricular salary schedule is $37,000. An assistant coach gets paid 11%. So that'd be that would be equal to 4,070. And then 20% benefits on top of that's an extra $814 times the 7 coaches, which would be 34,188. And that's if, I did talk to both athletic directors. They were talking soccer specifically. They were saying like the numbers in soccer and the things like that. They would think their coaches would be excited about getting a new coach or the possibility of a new coach, but they said it very well could come in that they don't need an extra coach on the varsity. I said, but I think, you know, if you're going to follow suit with everything else, then, you know, we at least offer it to them. Okay, and then if you could bring up our proposal, which was, it should be in the IBB agenda.
It's toward the bottom of our stuff.
Okay, so let me cut this down.
Sorry for
Oh, you're good. This one?
the final proposal. And then if you scroll down all the way to the bottom. So last week there was quite a bit of stipulation about what we had there in red. And so I made a call to both Tim Cronley and Matt Neff this last week. And this part really came from them in our research. And it's what you said, Bob, as far as the reason they are adamant that they wanted this in there was because it's so hard right now to find coaches, just like it's hard to find anything else. And he said generally a person that wants to coach is going to coach no matter what. And so if we lose a coach that first year because there's not enough kids, they said they'll get into something else right away and then they'll stay, and now I can't fill that position next year. And so that's where this came from. I asked them both how, you know, are you digging your heels in on this, obviously? And I mean, obviously they said yes, we really think it would be important, and it gives us that whole entire year to try to find a coach to fill that position if the numbers come back. But obviously they said it's the group's decision.
I had a chance to do some thinking about this over this week, and the thing is, I think it sets a bad precedence. If we don't have a staffing, or if we don't have students that show up and we have an extra teacher, if we, you know, our paras, we don't have enough, you know, students to cover all of our paras, and we're still, you know, keeping them on. I just think, just for other things, that's setting a bad precedence. But I understand, you know, the feeling of finding really good coaches, but I'm in the same mindset as far as teachers and other staff as well.
Yeah. I honestly think a good alternative, after I was thinking about it, would be, you know, to keep the first, you know, most high school coaches in these sports, they're working prior to their season even starting. And so if we could at least keep that coach for that year. So like, for example, if we're in spring, you know, I have my coaches, we're doing winter clinics, we're working with Little League, we do Little League camps in the winter time in the off season, and so I require that C team coach to be there. If we get to the spring and that C team doesn't exist because there's not enough players, then I would hope we just continue the rest of that year, this year, and then let them know, hey, if this happens next year, we're going to have to do some legwork in the summertime to get some pretty hard numbers in order to keep it. That would be my compromise. Instead of just saying, you know, come spring, oh, there's no team, you know, you're going to have to go home.
So you're just saying take out the statement that says plus the next.
Plus the next year.
So we don't guarantee the following year,
Yeah.
but during that year, since they've already put in the time,
That's what I was thinking would be
they've already developed.
maybe a good compromise. Both athletic directors want to leave it as it is, but again, that's obviously this group's decision.
That falls in line with what we do with teachers and
So
flashlights down.
then the coach, who's probably been getting paid since September, doesn't have to give back money, but now the next year, they won't start by getting paid at all. If they work for the district as a certified person, they won't get started. But if the numbers reappear, you would rehire them, and then you would lump sum or whatever's left of the contract year, you would insert that step back in.
Yeah, I would think you'd just get
Is
them
that
off the
right?
books until that season.
Right,
and
right.
Until
You
it's
pay it like
guaranteed.
we do our street coaches, which would be, you know, a 3 or a 4 month
Sure.
contract, right?
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Hypothetical. You have a freshman C-team football coach who coaches an entire year. And under the assumption that he's gonna be rehired the next year, starts to do spring football stuff at the end of May, does summer all the way through to August.
Because there's weight room and.
Not enough kids show up in August. He doesn't have a job anymore, hasn't had a contract yet.
Well, he would if he's already been contracted.
But if he's the C-team coach, he wouldn't be on another contract until he comes back into.
When the contract's issued.
In August. Well, no.
October for sports.
Well,
right?
October, but,
Sign that.
They're not like
the
a,
pay begins in September.
I think we're going down a really bad path
Yeah.
to try to have these coincide with teacher-based contracts. No supplemental contract is guaranteed the next year. That's for any of the supplementals guys. So to try to say that we're gonna try to do that, this, I think was just a bad precedent, and I gotta put my thumb down on it. Now, when we pay the coaches and things like that, obviously if they're street coaches, they go through the season. You know, paying them, I think, and we've changed the practice for most, for a lot of the coaches, that if they're staff and they get paid throughout the year and then there's not the numbers, we talked about that and said that, you know, we sort of had heartburn with that because now we're paying them when they might not be there.
Right.
So, I mean, that's, I still don't know if that's a best practice, and maybe I guess it's one I can live with, but, I mean, I think just overall, from my perspective, that we can't treat this supplemental type contract different than our other supplemental contracts.
I'm like, and this may be a total, but not hypothetical, but somebody that's doing baseball, they've been going all year, they're getting their 12 months spread out, and then we find out, not saying that I want this, that there's not the team and it's not there. If they've been doing the work, if the varsity coach says they've been working, they've been doing clinics, they've done X, Y, and Z, can't we just stop the pay at that point because it's not continuing? And is it you've done the work to earn? I mean, if we're spreading it out all year, and I guess that comes down to when is the coaching season? Because I kind of go to, if the coaching season is just in season, we're going to pay you during season, then they're only committed to the time during the season. That doesn't build a program. If you
So
want to
you're
build a
saying you're-
program,
So when you
then
go,
it's a
when you
year-round
go into
thing.
the pay as part, you have like,
I agree with you.
Bill starts football in the summertime, but
It's not
his
like it.
previous year, his
It's
money
technically
doesn't
done.
end until August 31st.
So that's my thing, is when does, like, if we're paying on a 12-month schedule, it's because we also wanna build robust programs that are 12-month programs. So if they've done those summer ones, that's kind of part of that ending the last season. And maybe I'm thinking about that very wrong, but I agree with both sentiments is my problem, and I'm trying to marry them, and I don't know how I can marry them in my head. The one thing that I do know is that I feel like the numbers that have been come up with are on the conservative side compared to all the other districts, which I am comfortable and happy with. Like, I feel like we're understaffed on track to be competitive, but I also think that they respectfully meet our intent of fiscally responsible and being conservative. Like, I think it meets all of those. I'm having a hard time marrying that and what Brian's saying, because I agree with both sentiments.
I feel a lot more comfortable with the red language by taking out plus and next. But
Well, because that even kind of implies you might get it, like, some people are gonna think about it, that's a
2
lot of
years.
years.
Yeah.
So put a scenario on the table that would apply under that red language.
Well, we could use a real life one from this year with cross-country coaches at a high school level had been working with their team all summer long. Then they get to September and all of a sudden there's less kids that come out than what they were suspecting, what had been the prior 10 years. I'm making that number up, I don't know how many years, but a lot of years in a row, the number had been enough for 2 coaches, and then all of a sudden less kids come up. And from the district level, we said, okay, well, we need to cut 1 coach. Well, they had already done work all summer long with the group, clinics, retreats, running every day, and then we were gonna cut the coach right then and there, and then that caused a problem for that team because they're kind of coaching it as well. So then that's why this discussion came up.
Had that extra coach been contracted at that point?
I don't know what.
The 2 cross-country coaches? Yeah, when did we
Were
get?
they staff?
They were
Yes, they're both staff.
Are we talking about like the high school?
Yeah,
So, when-
they wouldn't have been contracted till the middle of September.
right, but in a sense, if we look at, for the 12-month people for staff, they're paid September through August 31st. So if we're saying that it's a year-round job, then wouldn't it be that when they start their September, that all those things that they're working through the summer is part of the annual cycle? And if they get renewed in September, then it goes for the 12 months again, because they got the 12 months pay, they were getting paid.
Right. So when they were working through the summer, they were working on last year's contract. is what
But it
they
might have
were
been
Yeah.
this year's coaches, this year's athletes, because they
That's
show up on
correct.
August 10th or
Yeah.
12th, but it's still part of last year's.
But in contrary, if you have somebody on a baseball coach that has worked September all the way until baseball starts, now you have somebody that has put in 9 months on a contracted schedule of this year's baseball season starts and the kids don't show up.
And got paid.
And that's where we would say, that's where this is saying, you retain that person and finish out that season through the August. The next year, it's not a guaranteed contract, and that's
But they were getting paid from September 1 to August 31st, they got 12 checks. And that's sort of the cycle of that complete season. Part of the job is that you start the season and the season wraps up and then you start gearing up for the next. And then if it happens that, for whatever reason, that on September 1, there wasn't the numbers and we had less coaches, you still got paid for all that work you did in the summer.
in the summer, but not for ones that their seasons don't start
It's just
until
hard if
March.
it's the new athletes, cause to your point, John, they were working with their new team. You know what I
Right.
mean, like that's the summer work.
Well, plus a fall coach, like a cross-country coach, as soon as the numbers don't show up, they don't get a contract. But if it happens in baseball,
Right.
they get paid for like 8 months. So now do you make them give the money back so that they match what happened in cross-country? Or do you say that, and if you say that to them, but you don't say it to cross-country, now what? That's the weird thing, is how that kicks, when you find out about those shortage of numbers.
Yeah,
And that's partly created, and I'm not arguing against it, that we pay contracted teachers who coach 12 months a year.
Yeah.
And that will.
That could, I'm not suggesting we get rid of it, but that could fix that, because nobody ever gets paid until the season starts and the kid shows up. The kids show up. So,
We've created our
I don't know if
own.
I like that, but
We've created
It's
our own.
definitely a topic every year. Matter of fact, I just actually had a certified staff person email me the other day because we have classified staff that are paid for the season only, so they feel like they get their stipend more in one lump sum than spread out. And so the certified person said, I would like to be paid in one lump sum. And I'm like, oh.
that's not how that works.
The good news is, sorry,
Oh,
Connie.
no.
The good news is this scenario doesn't come up very often. I mean, it's, you know, I
And we're in
think
a time
this
when we're
is,
growing.
yeah, this is my 20th year being the head baseball coach. It only happened to me one time, that was 3 years ago. It just happened with cross country
for the first time.
for the first time.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, you know, case by case almost, but at the same time, I can see both sides. Definitely.
So are we trying to fix a problem that's not theirs? I've heard someone say that.
Well, every time it comes up, boy, I'm fighting to keep
But you
that
just
coach.
said it doesn't come up.
But every time it has,
But you said it doesn't come up very often.
it doesn't.
So are we making the rule for the 1% or the 99%?
But you have to have the rule for the 1%, because then it causes.
No, I think you should have the rule for the vast majority of the times is how you set policy and how you negotiate. You don't set the rule for the exception to the rules.
I have a question.
But then what, sorry,
No,
I
go ahead.
interrupted you again. I'm just saying, so then what do we do in that case? So
The exception.
What do we do with the exception? Because the first thing Becky's gonna say is, what do we have in the books? I'm like, nothing. So then what, no, then there's no right answer.
And then I say, let's give them, it's a $3,000 stipend and $3,000 out of a $50 million budget to help with staff. They've been working all summer. In my world, we're about humans, and I think it's worth, they've been working, and it ends up cross country, they need somebody running in the front and the back, no matter if there's 5 kids or 25 kids or
'Cause they
40
spread
kids.
out
But,
over-
and that was our decision?
Yes.
Then what's the problem?
Well, he was just trying to find something so it would be, already be in the books.
Because then,
I'm saying if we acted like we should for the exception to the rule, and we did the thing that we thought was good for the program, and the person was whole, then I think things are working.
you're exactly right, I agree with you 100%. The problem therein lies, 6 months down the road, it happens again and we say no. And now these people find out about it, no, that's a huge can of worms.
Well, I don't know if that's the case. You're saying that you're saying something that hasn't happened yet.
I think he's saying just, let's do it on a case by case
Yeah,
basis, is
I-
what
yeah, I
I hear what
agree.
he's saying.
I agree, I just.
And there are districts that do that according to your research.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also know there's superintendents out there that wanna follow the letter of the law and we're policy but that's always, you could what if all day long.
That's true.
I agree with you 100%, Brian, I'm just trying to look at all scenarios and,
Connie, what were you gonna say?
yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to ask if there would be any kind of legitimacy to, I mean, if the problem is like the season begins, it becomes kind of a semantics on, are you working on last year's season or are you working on next year's season? And so could contracts not be let for that sport until its season arrives? So say baseball just started February, contracts are let for baseball coaches. Because
For all spring
here's,
sports.
or all spring
Yep.
sports,
Yep.
because here it is, here's signups, here's the kids, there they are, they showed up. So this is our coaching staff. Your contract, if we want them to run 12 months, now runs 12 months from February 1st or whenever baseball started and the kids showed up, and runs through, and I get it, that those kids are gonna leave the field the 1st of May or whenever state, or end of May, and you're gonna start working with the new batch of kids. But that can be like considered your recruitment time with your new batch of kids, but you're getting paid for this year's season, starting February 1 to January 31st of next year. And once this season ends, you're on your recruitment process with your next year. Could that feasibly happen? Because then you're really not letting a contract until the kids actually show up and you know their numbers and that's how many people are
The problem,
there.
I think the problem, and I'm speaking, just through all my work through the LEA, is people don't want, I shouldn't say they don't wanna do the work, they do the work, but they don't like doing the work without getting paid for it.
But they are getting paid for it.
Right.
So basically, instead of going
It's
from
just-
September to August, it goes February to January.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
I think it's shifting a coaching mindset that you're
Yes.
doing a season and then recruiting versus recruiting for your season. And I'm like, I think it's Brainstorm. If I'm analyzing it from a coaching standpoint, when I coached varsity or coached C team up at the high school, that's a weird shift in my coaching mind. Like I'm getting ready to build and culminate with a season. So that's a weird one for me. The other thing that I worry about with people and with coaches and that they're on staff is just that whole consistency in my pay, which it would be afterwards, but I don't know, people are on this September to September, like August 31st to September 1st. It's in alignment with things, and I think most of the sports have figured out kind of when their start and end time is within their season as far as the season. I kinda go with it should be a case by case, but I also struggle, you never know who's gonna be making those decisions on the case by case. But I think taking out the plus next year is you're finishing out that season's work.
So in the
With
matter,
this
we're
committed.
kinda, to whoever said that matter of interest, I think we need to figure out what is our issue here that we're actually talking about. Cause this in the red thing is one issue, but there's
They're two
also
different
all of
topics.
these issues, with the research that he just showed us. So I think we need to back up and pick which one we wanna start with. If you wanna stay on this red thing, we can do that first, but we need to say our interest and then, our common interest, our issue and our common interest, and then do some brainstorming. Cause we need to get to a point, we've spent quite a bit of time on this one thing, and to Jason's point, doesn't come up a lot, so I think we're spending a lot of time on this one thing. So, let's finish it. Do we wanna do this red thing real quick? To see if it needs to be in here or not? Do people have it? Okay. So the issue is,
Retaining quality coaches. For that red piece, that's what
Mhm.
the ADs are saying, right? So the issue is the red language, the interest
It's the
behind the
interest.
issue.
The red stuff.
the interest is retaining quality coaches.
The issue is
Just
the
leave
red
it and
stuff.
you can just put interest in there. The issue is just this red thing.
Can we put that into the minutes?
Yeah.
The red thing.
Very specific.
Yeah.
It's very specific.
And then I heard somebody for interest also say equity
Mm-hmm.
for interest. Does anybody have any other common interests?
Continuing to have competitive athletic program. Keep
Is it E or I?
No.
Didn't look right last time.
Competitive. I don't do
Competitive,
Athletic.
competitive athletics.
Okay, any other common interests?
I think giving stability to your staff too.
Yeah.
I mean, honoring staff and honoring the, yeah, but I mean, loyalty, that's just that, you don't wanna jerk up and down with people's.
And here, it's year-round work with your students too, with those people.
Okay, so let's brainstorm solutions. All ideas are acceptable. Keep our interests in mind.
We just write original red minus the next year.
Okay?
No change.
So no change, and then the next one was take out the additional year. And then,
Yeah, and let's put we only make decisions when the very start of the season, how many athletes show up, that's how many coaches we've.
so altering the contract, so remove next
It's right here.
next year, another,
Plus the next.
yeah, plus the next. Take it out altogether.
Where was it?
It's our final proposal. So,
Thank you. There we go. Right here is where it is, Lisa, if you're looking for that, sorry.
And then issue contracts.
Make all coaches voluntary.
Fundraise it.
we pretty much are anyway.
I kept track of my hours for baseball one year and I made like 45 cents an hour.
Yeah, it's.
I get 23 if I can, so I suppose.
Issue contracts.
By the time
beginning
all
of
your
season
work
for
on
1
you're
year.
probably under 23 now. Probably 18 cents an hour.
Make all coaches
Yeah.
Or we could just
I
do
thought if I
paid
made
fun.
one really far this way, the other ones wouldn't seem so bad.
There was something in our arms about humor, right?
Yeah.
I think that one meets all the interests, making them voluntary, builds relationships, volunteering makes you feel better as a person.
We'll have to go
It's a
back to our
good
members with that one.
Yeah, it's
What are
gratifying, sure.
Is it gratifier?
That's all they've been saying,
Let's
is
do
please
that.
just let us all volunteer to coach.
Can't we all just volunteer?
Can't we all just get
That'd be
along
nice.
on the fields,
I like
coach
sitting this
together?
way, so it's true.
We all just feel, is that why you're smart? Are we gonna?
Okay, any other brainstorms, people? Did you put the one, oh yeah. The content, okay. Any other brainstorms? Okay, apply the standards. So. Let's start with the bottom one.
Okay. Is it legal?
Yes.
Does it positively impact students?
Probably.
Does it meet our interests? Is it equitable and logistically feasible?
I need to hear from someone about what impact that has on the in-house operation.
I was gonna ask for
HR.
On payroll.
As far as that goes, it logistically can happen as long as we are consistent and there's something in the negotiated agreement that says, spring, coaches are paid starting this month and ending this month. Fall coaches are starting this month and designating what are fall coaches, what are spring coaches, because there's a mix there. And so, I mean, it logistically, it could work. It is, I mean, I have to do that with street coaches and stuff, and maybe if we could do.
So as you move from one regular contract year to the next, you have to re-enter.
Yeah, I almost think that we don't wanna really cross fiscal years. There's only one contract that we cross fiscal years with, and that's the superintendent. Generally, so, I mean, with that, I think that it would be better to, yeah, if we were gonna start halfway through a season, then we pay them over 6 months. You know, let's say if it's spring sports start in January, okay, you get, if we're gonna do that, I don't know. Just, I think crossing, let's say, because now you've obligated and then we have, I don't anticipate it anytime soon, but a big hit in July and we're building a budget and we have that obligation in the next budget year. I don't know. I just think that,
So you're saying
I guess one
it's
reason,
logistically feasible? That's what you're saying?
it adds complications, and I think that probably is why the reason, and that does get in, because sometimes our fiscal year doesn't quite coincide with the sports year, and that's some of the,
So would
the conflict.
would auditors have to,
Yeah.
would the auditors have to make an adjustment for like if we're in the next fiscal year to the prior fiscal year on those contracts?
You might have to,
So are we
I
crossing
think
this
he's
off?
saying it's not logistically feasible, which means
it
we have to
adds
take
some
it off.
complications for sure.
Okay, well, and I'll say the positively impact students was
Unless you
really,
pay it within the fiscal year, then it's feasible.
Yeah,
So
we
it's
paid
6
within the
months.
fiscal year, and then, you know, effectively what we can only go through August. We can,
Right,
I,
but even for spring then, Brian, what I hear these, unless I misunderstood them, that it gets paid for the 12 months, we cross the with spring sports and winter sports, we'd be crossing the fiscal year, which is.
Brian's saying they have to be, it has
So-
to be fully paid
No,
by
just be-
August.
I know, so I don't think it's,
unless we made that adjustment on there. And I also don't think it
they
positively
basically
impacts
be
students.
paid by, like street coaches then.
Yeah.
Every coach would be it would be paid like street coaches.
you
Well,
could,
I guess
you could
that's
extend it
brainstorm.
a little bit. But,
Yeah.
How many
So I have a
months are they paid for?
question.
The street coaches are paid for the season.
For and how many
So-
payments?
So typically it's maybe 3 months. Which one, let's see, basketball goes longer.
So do street coaches feel the obligatory commitment
Work all
to
year.
work all year?
I don't think they do. I think they're in
I agree, they don't.
If they're.
Many of them don't. Some of them do show up for weight room in the summer. I mean, it's not like none of them don't. I don't think it's a blanket thing. But lots of them are here
for the season.
for the tennis season and then they're
Yeah.
gone, right? I mean, they're not in,
If they're a head coach, they're doing.
right, then they're, right.
But maybe not assistants as much.
Which is where the bulk of the coaches that will come and go are actually.
Well, yeah, you're
Right, that we're talking, that's actually what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, there'll be enough kids for a program, so it's not the head coach that's the problem.
Good point.
no.
It's the assistants.
Okay, which
So I
one?
heard pay, like street coaches as far as, just heard that that's not a positive because then we lose that impact of people feeling like they have the full year consistency.
So
Is that
for
registered?
Jason as a head coach being paid just for the season when he's working all year, for sure.
So could you pay them could you contract for the pay a couple of weeks into each season, which gives you the numbers you're looking for? So fall coaches would get paid, the money would come in September, October, and November, and winter coaches would get paid December, January, February, and spring coaches would get paid in their March, April, and May checks.
I like that.
So everybody started the season has a couple of weeks under their belt, so you've seen your numbers show up or not too, by the way. Because every one of those, you're a dabble in, you're 3 weeks in. So now you know your numbers, plus or minus a kid. I wouldn't want to be charged the payroll for keeping track of that. Yeah, don't pretend that's a perfect answer.
That's the logistically
Yeah, messy part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Isn't that how most districts pay their coaches?
but that is more or less what you do with street coaches though.
In season.
Yeah.
You're already doing
They are
that
just the
with them.
season.
With
Yeah.
Most of them.
Most of them have like a week.
Fall.
Most of
Yeah,
them
if
are.
someone's getting a list of.
And
the ADs,
I
the ADs
know we're
can-
talking district,
can
but
charge
you also
right?
have to think of other
Yeah.
people's budget, when you're talking a coach's stipend, if they've been there a while, that could be in the neighborhood of, over $300 a month, that's a big cut, for $1 million inside a year.
Well, yeah, you can do that,
Okay,
This is all one.
okay, so,
Let's just go from the top down and start, because we're getting into the weeds of how we would make some of those work and haven't decided what those are going
Okay, so original red language with the plus the next in there.
so this
Go
would
back.
be in there.
Interest.
I wouldn't be able to obligate the district with that language.
Okay, so is it legal? Yes. Does it positively impact students? Yes. Does it meet our interests? Yes. Is it can the budget support it is the one that I say is a no, because we can't guarantee something if the kids aren't there.
And you are
And it's
also
not
obligating
equitable
the
to-
district for
Okay.
the next year.
The original language with the additional year, we're comfortable striking out. Removing the plus the next year, is it legal? Does it positively impact students? Say yes, because you're continuing with the people that have built the team. Does it meet our interests? It retains coaches. It's equity, if you're continuing with what you had started with. It's competitive and maintains stability. Can the budget support it? If it's only for that 1 year, it's what we've already previously been budgeting upon, so we haven't lost funds, I guess I would be asking, like, that's my, like, this is how I budget
For that year, I think
For
it
that
would be
year.
supported.
for the budget, support keeping that. And it sounds like it's only happening once in a sport, maybe every few years, so we're looking at a $30,000 cost every couple of years. I'm asking budget people. Aren't just
Yeah, I
running
mean, big
things.
picture,
Is it understandable? Does it improve relationships?
Not with Brian.
I just think we're spending a lot of time on a problem that really doesn't exist.
Basically, if you did this one and you stick with what we've always done, we're still in the same place because we're making those decisions as they come up.
My mind was
Without
up to the
obligating
between.
the district.
Okay, let's finish with this, so is it, the budget he said the budget can support it, is it understandable?
Yes.
Does it, does it improve, is it ratifiable?
Yes.
But does the
No.
board, the two board members,
Oh, yeah.
would the board approve it?
No.
Both of them said no, so. Okay, what's the next one?
So this one is what we currently have.
Just take the, just keep it with status quo.
so that red note would be gone completely.
Is it legal? Does it positively impact students? I think it's status quo. Does it meet our interests? It doesn't, not these interests up here.
Why not? Have we have
If-
never, we've never
if
not
we've
had that
not,
coach
okay.
come back, so I don't know how that would meet our interest.
If we continue. Is it equitable and logistically feasible? That's the questionability I heard from Jason, was not having language there, the equity and the future,
Yeah,
you don't know.
I've seen it so many times where, it's just, if it happens, I just don't want it to be a district thing to where you've said yes one time and then it's a no another time, and then those two people find out or they do the research, and I think and I don't know that I don't know if there'd be a situation where they ever would say no, but at the same time it could happen, and then, I don't know, I just think you're walking a fine line there if you said no at the beginning of the year for football, and then spring comes along and another situation happens and you say, okay, yeah, we're gonna pay that coach. Why? Because he made their argument or whatever, I don't know.
Or is
But
is it an easier argument to make because football starts at the beginning of the fiscal year and baseball doesn't?
Yeah, I don't know.
Can you elaborate on your dilemma there, Jason? What do you mean saying no and yes and?
Well, meaning if you start a program and you realize you don't have enough kids, and you say, well, I think we need to keep this coach this year or whatever, kind of like we did with our cross-country program. Those people that did prior work this year, so we ended up keeping both coaches when the numbers didn't support it. So I would hate for that situation to say yes, but then now come in the spring and I find out I don't have enough for a C team, and I go to the district, say, can I keep my coach, and they say no. So how would that, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there would have to be something, I think, on record for equitability.
Well, maybe that's the language we need and not this language.
Right.
If that's truly the issue we're trying to resolve, I mean, I can understand that,
Yeah. And I don't know that, I can't ever see Dr. Meyer or even, previous superintendents waffling on that, but I guess it could happen. It would save me a lot of time and energy.
So the bottom line issue here is if you come into the sports season and you do not have enough participants to justify a coach, do we drop that coach at that point? See, to me, that goes back to when we contract that person. In my world, if I sign a contract with somebody, I'm bound to that contract. So if we have a coach contracted for your season, that guy better be there working whether you got 3 kids or 30.
Yep.
Which goes back to then we're saying that our contracts are when you get them in September to the end of August, so that summer work is part of that fiscal year. And I think that makes sense, which basically is saying the same thing that's in that language. It's just not crossing and having to be clear with our coaches that the contract is September through August.
And so I'll speak for myself in my program. So like I said, I've been doing it 20 years. I've had a C team 17 of those 20 years. In that time, I've had like 3 different C team head coaches, but let's say I only have one C team head coach and he's been doing it for 13 years, and then all of a sudden we get a bad bubble, but I know the next class coming up after that is going to be strong again and we'll have it. So, I think that's a good argument to say you've already done, you've been working this year already. We know that it's a bubble year. We'll have you back next year. Otherwise, if we let that coach go, if I let that coach go right at my season, then he can go coach track or whatever, and I might not ever get him back. But I don't know. I also see like what Brian was saying, and
No
like
matter
what
whether
you're
or not
saying.
you can make the case.
Well, that's what I said. I would.
It's that time in September that you sit down and say, I know he didn't have enough players last year, but look at the class below him, we have 17 that are on our, I mean, now we have Lakeland basketball teams, like we are starting to build our programs to where we would have reference and we'd have information from programs in the area to say, we have 7 basketball club teams, you're gonna have players and stuff, so
That's
in
why I think-
September, they'd say, yeah, we're not cutting it, we're continuing, cause.
That's why I think it's very important to pay them for the year that they've already been working in, and then say, if it happens again next year, nothing.
Which I think is what Bob said, they're contracted at the beginning of the year and they get paid through the
Right.
year. The only, the season I would be concerned about is fall, because football, soccer, and volleyball and track all start at the beginning of August, and their contracts are not issued until September.
Track's
So you know the numbers aren't there,
Cross-country.
you know the numbers aren't there already at that point, if it's a year where they're not, so they don't get a contract, but a baseball coach doesn't, so they do get a contract, so you
That's the,
were
that's
still
the
stuck with that
limits.
dilemma, and that's about.
And going back to football, so they always do spring stuff, which you're probably starting up here pretty quick, I would assume.
Yeah.
You know, and so those coaches the previous year are already in line and they're already working for the next year because they're already doing.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up just using myself as an example. I go coach football in August. We don't have enough kids, so we don't give me a contract, cause there's not enough humans. And then I am on contract for baseball, hypothetically, and we get to February, and tryouts are at the end of February, and there's not enough kids for me to coach baseball either.
So you got paid
Do
for
I have
baseball.
to pay back my
Right.
contract for baseball?
No, because
Or
it started
because
in
my
September.
contract gets cut, or do I get paid through that season?
Yeah, because like Bob
You
said,
get
you
paid
already
for
signed
your
your
season,
contract.
you already signed
Doesn't matter
it.
if you have 30 or, he said 3 or 30, you still get paid.
And then it's a conversation with you and the AD saying, hey,
Yeah.
you better look, you may not have a contract next year. If
So-
numbers don't.
But, so that language works for everything but fall.
Right, because you're back to the cross-country coach, who got cut because the numbers were low. And then they sit and work at the table in the teacher's lunchroom and talk to somebody who also doesn't have numbers,
she didn't
but
get
is
cut.
getting paid.
Yeah, they got, we kept them on.
Hey, they didn't get cut. So that's what my point is, we're
Yeah.
saying this is hypothetically they cut, but they didn't.
Cross-country coach.
Yeah, they did.
They didn't get cut.
Oh.
In fact, nobody
So
has,
I'm
even
trying to solve
that
a
year for
problem
me,
that doesn't exist.
I was able to retain my.
Yes, that's what.
Okay,
It's
so
2022, Mark.
is,
That's what we
it,
do.
is everyone,
Come on, get woke.
so this take it out altogether means that we just keep it status quo?
Yeah, we don't add any.
So this would all be crossed off and we don't add, we're gonna keep it the same?
Right.
Is there any, but, let's do a thumbs up.
But now is, because we crossed out remove plus
Right,
next,
but that- keep it.
am I hearing now that
Right.
it
So
may
this
be
next-
ratifiable?
No.
No. They're saying that is already the general practice, they
Just
just don't
take it
want
out
the language
altogether
right
is
now.
what we
They
have
just wanna
status quo.
continue it.
That's all I'm saying.
And that's what they're saying is, we wanna continue that as the general
Without the
practice.
plus next,
Yeah.
it's what
Okay,
we already done.
so people, we need to go back to our norms, everyone needs to focus, we're having side conversations. Myself included, I'm not pointing fingers. We all, if everyone's okay with it, it sounds like we taking it out altogether. There's no issue because even with his 3 years, even with your scenario you gave and the cross-country coaches, we kept everyone on. So if you're in favor of just taking this out and this issue isn't really an issue we need to deal with yet, put your thumb up. Okay, unanimous thumbs up. Okay, so now, thank you everyone. So now we're going to this coaches per program criteria. So I'll remind everybody that we've had a subcommittee working on this all year. And how many people are on your committee? 20 people have been working on this all year. So the process and the intention of a subcommittee working on something all year is that when we come to this group, hopefully a lot of the groundwork and the comparison things that Jason brought to us is done. So at this point, our group is just looking at it and going through, they've already done the interests and the brainstorming has already happened in the subcommittee that they've done, and this is like their proposal. So at this point, we need to just say if there's any things we have questions, clarifications, if people have heartburn about something, they've already done this pre-work, if that makes sense to everyone. And so we're at the point where we are asking questions, clarifying, and if there's something we need to change, we do it, but then we move forward with voting.
This is what's being proposed.
Yes.
How does that compare with current circumstances?
That's the 7 more coaches, that would be at a cost of about $34,000.
Well, let's take the,
Yeah, but like in football.
let's take the football first.
We already have the football is what we have right now.
So football
Yeah,
is
it pretty much
current
hasn't,
It's same.
it hasn't changed.
Exactly.
This year is this is what we have this year.
And so, I think for Lakeland, for the 4A, would it go to 1 and 12, 1 and 14?
It goes to 1 and 10.
It would be 1 and 10, and what is it now?
That's what it is.
That's
right
what
now.
it is right now.
1 and 10 right now.
It's
Oh,
just,
okay.
but, so the language though would be there so that when Mr. Neff comes to Dr. Meyer or the new superintendent and says, hey, we have an additional 10 kids, can we get another coach? Can I get?
I see what you're saying, okay.
Where does the 1 and 10 come from?
It's just a number that the group talked about as far as safety and what it takes to run that program effectively.
So it's basically arbitrary.
Or, yes.
But it goes
But it's comparative to a lot of
It
other.
does
But
go back
it's,
to the
that's why we
ratio.
did the legwork as far as like.
9 to 1, 9 to 1, 8 to 1, no
So
ratio.
it's sort of what schools are doing right now, it looks like.
A typical.
There's
Cuna-
nothing in
Cuna.
IHSAA that
No,
requires.
there's not,
that,
unfortunately.
Any other.
I spent probably
agency?
a whole afternoon,
Yeah.
3 or 4 hours just combing IHSAA and.
I do appreciate you getting all that input, Casey.
Thank you.
Yeah, he did that earlier during the year when
Yeah.
we started working on it.
Can you go back to the other screen?
Just a sec, we have so many up, I have to, this one's.
The second line, is that new language?
Yes, that's the new language.
And that's to avoid that back and forth pitching
Well-
of the when does an AD ask, when do they not, and it's a who has a better argument, instead it's just down to a number.
It's-
This is general practice right now, but it's making sure that
So is the language implicit that if you reach that circumstance where you have 10 more kids than, what, 110? Then it's allowable to bring another coach on or required to bring another coach on?
I would say,
Allowable.
yeah, I would say it'd be allowable, where it'd be a conversation with the head
Because we
coach.
never want to get in a position where we're required to do something we can't do.
right,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's, the conversation with the committee was that the head coach would, if they felt like they needed it for safety or just for the program, that they would have a conversation with the activities director, who would then have a conversation with the superintendent with a request, to add. But
These
like
are
the
more
cross-country coaches, they know exactly how many kids they can handle before it becomes unsafe, when they're out running on the road. So every single sport kind of had that conversation that there'd be a lot of factors before they would, it's
So I
not
would like
required.
to see some permissive language in there using may
But
somehow.
May,
Could it be like parameters? I know, Dr. Pasley, you had created a thing for SWD or first class overages about there's 4 different stipulations.
So the head coach doesn't count there and it's 10 assistants to the 100 kids, is that true?
Yes, that's 11 total.
Right, right.
well, but they do count as a coach, so it would be
Yeah.
11 coaches would be 110 kids.
Would be 110 kids.
Yes.
So once they hit
Okay.
120.
Right. So it's 10.9. It's 1 to 10.9.
I think this is,
Does
maybe
anyone
higher
know-
is great
Correct?
language. Is that okay, Bob?
Because if you got to 112 kids, that's greater than.
Is that permissible?
Just by a
language?
piece of a kid, but it's greater than.
No, they have to get past
It
that.
has to hold,
10.
right.
Mhm.
I was just wondering if it should say 10.9. I mean, that's the number. So they have to get to 120, not 119, they don't get it. Okay.
Bob, is that permissive language, may be higher?
Yeah. Does anyone know what our average turnout is over the years?
All of them or just in
Football.
Lakeland,
We're usually between 70 and 80.
Lakeland's right around
So
100.
our ratio is much lower than 1 to 10 then.
Yeah.
On
Not at
most.
Timberlake would be right.
Yeah,
to
we'd be
110.
pretty close to the number every year.
And And so would
Oh,
Lakeland.
because you have 7,
Lakeland's
okay.
about the same.
Yeah, and Lakeland runs about 100.
Yeah.
It's pretty close.
Okay.
I think
There are-
third grades.
Yeah, they kinda went with, this is what our current reality is, so this is, and we're functioning in this current reality, so this is where, this is the baseline.
Appreciate that.
Okay, any questions on swim, cheer, dance, cross country, dance?
Just need to add
that
Need to
may
add
be
the
hired.
may be hired for all of them.
It's my kids' thing right now.
And now with this soccer, so right now it's listed as varsity JV and C. Neither program has a C team soccer, but it's just in there for future, so I mean,
Yeah.
it's just,
Fine.
you know, but yeah, it's
If
totally
it-
fine. I just wanted the group to know, I didn't want
Okay.
someone to say, we don't even have a C team, what's it up there for?
Can you put that head and varsity assistant that's under volleyball and basketball and the others also next to the soccer varsity, just continuity?
What do you want me to do?
So we're-
It says 2 varsity next to soccer, there's nothing, but next to all the others,
Head
it
varsity.
distinguishes that that's head and varsity.
Sorry, that's my fault.
I was just consistency.
I was more intent on numbers when I was doing this instead, yeah, it's just.
That's why we look at
I
it.
never fine tuned.
No, I think it's good.
And this is, the track is kind of the same, Bill tell me, with Timberlake as well, I think we're pretty much running the same thing that
Yeah.
we've been doing as well, it's track and football.
Yeah, we're usually around 100 with boys and girls combined, pretty close to it, just above it actually usually.
So really, the new information, I should say, with this proposal is, which we have found through our comparisons, that we're kind of behind the other schools. Like our basketball programs don't have a varsity assistant coach paid. The other programs do. And so that's what this committee came up with doing, that, you know, every sport with that, if the numbers allow, that you would have a varsity assistant.
So this would be the ideal coaching.
Yes. Yes,
Understanding that it's
And-
always, can you find them?
yes,
And not necessarily just to put a warm body there.
yeah.
Right.
So my question, I guess, is does this specific document and language go into the NA? Or is it referenced in the NA as coaching,
It needs to go in the NA, because we've had this come up 1,000 times.
Yeah.
My suggestion is, it would be really nice if this was, because it's annually you come together, you can change it, but then at least it's in where they can access it, would be my.
That's why I was just making sure clarify if it's a reference point or if it's in there. I think in there.
Yeah, and Bob, to your point, that's when I was talking with Mr. Cromley up at Timberlake. He was, you know, I was sharing him, you know, talking about soccer specifically, and he's like, you know, I just had a great conversation with our soccer coach, and right now, he doesn't really feel the need that he needs, you know, an assistant.
Well,
He thinks
as
they
a
can.
head coach, you know that taking on assistants adds responsibility
It-
to you.
it does,
And particularly if
yeah.
it's not a very experienced person.
Yeah. So I think this language in there would allow the AD then to say, look, yeah, if now we see a situation where, you know, it's there, we have it here, that he can go ahead and hire, but.
Okay, any other questions about this?
This is all new language,
Yep.
that's not currently in the.
Yeah, we have a side sheet that we've been using the last couple, 3-5 years, that we have that has numbers in it, it just, that Jason and I have been using and going to Brooke to say, but this makes it, this spells it out cleaner. And it took the work of the 20 people for the year to do all of this, to just get it carried out, so I think it's good now.
And if you could go to the cost again, just to, so it's, so this is, if all of those coaches came on next year at a median rate, it would be a cost to the district, $34,000.
Okay, I'm gonna put this in the bottom of. So it's kind of all the same stuff.
But I was very surprised to see, especially our other 4A and 3A counterparts, that, you know, was like, wow, I didn't realize that we were actually behind.
Okay, any other discussion?
when I was doing my research and trying to put everything together, I was trying to keep you in mind as far as, did that answer your questions as far as the comparisons and,
Yes.
cause you had asked last week if.
Yes,
Okay.
yep, yep,
I was gonna call you and then I got so busy and.
yep, that's fine.
Okay.
Yep, it did, thank you.
Okay, so any more discussion? Okay, who's in favor of putting this in the negotiated agreement? Thumbs up. You still wanna talk about it, thumbs sideways or thumbs down? You can't. Okay, do you still wanna talk more about it, or do you?
No, I just don't know that the language needs to be in there or not in there, and I don't know, I mean, I think the board needs to discuss all this. It's pretty, I mean, it's a lot. I understand it's for 1 year, but I think that there has to be a board discussion on, you know, this whole thing. I wouldn't wanna get rid of the whole agreement over one piece of it.
You mean as far as the cost, is that what you're concerned about, or the language that?
The language,
that
yeah,
was
the
in
cost,
red?
the language, yeah, the whole thing,
Yeah, but I think in this group, if
It's
you
all
could,
just new.
yeah,
you know.
yeah. So that's kinda what we do, so, like through IBB, so what we do is, if this group says yes, or if people are, if you go this way, it means you're okay, you know, you still have questions, you're not sure, you could go either way, but you're gonna accept whatever the group decided. So then
Right.
if this group decides as a whole that we're gonna move on from it, if
Yeah.
everyone's this way and the people that are this way are okay, then we go back to our people and say, this is what our committee came up with and we agree. And then you can talk about it and you can, you know, if people have questions, you can do it. What I, and tell me if I'm wrong, but what I don't wanna do is, like, have you go back to the board, talk about it, and then talk, you know, come up with, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
But basically, you guys are reps from the board to sit on the team, and this is the team. This is not a discussion that you take back to the board and the board makes the discussion, this is the interest-based bargaining.
Right, I
So-
understand that, but legally, they don't make the decision, and legally,
Right,
the
and the
decision
board has
is
to
between
approve
the
it.
board
Yeah.
Right,
and
but, and
I.
also the association has to ratify it.
Right.
So, in other words, you're really a thumbs down because you're not thinking that we need to, so we need to
Yeah, I guess that's
talk
what I was
about.
saying.
I
Yeah.
know, I was sideways,
yeah.
because here's my thing is that, I know last year, although we've had a few changes, but I'm just thinking about last year, the discussion was the disappointment and the heaviness of concentration toward sports,
Oh,
right? Instead of
Yeah.
teachers and curriculum and a better working environment and all those things that have to do with education. I get the sports do too, I understand it all plays a part in it, but so from looking from that perspective, that's all I'm saying is that,
So, I guess, and I'm like, I hear exactly what you're saying, and I'm like, well, correct me if I'm hearing it wrong, because to me, if I'm looking at just the language right now, I'm 100% comfortable with the language. I feel like there's due diligence behind it. I'd stand behind it in front of anyone. The money needs to go on a list of what's the continuing cost. When we come down to the final money, that's when we gotta prioritize. If it comes out to, we could get into a situation where the budget doesn't support it and it's a this or that. And so I guess what I'm hearing more than you wanna go back and have that conversation and debate the language on this with the board is, and I almost think it would be preemptive if we went back and said in front of the board right now, well, we want to decide on this piece of the money before we do those others. They're gonna say we have questions. So I guess I would say we vote right now on the language piece, but it does go on that running agenda of what's our final proposal package. So what I think I'm hearing is that you're good with the language, it's part of the final proposal package, and I won't know on the financial piece until it's part of the entire
right,
picture.
because we have more
Because we have
needs,
more
right? If
money.
I'm looking at, from a
Right.
board perspective, I'm looking at the whole district and all the needs, although it's,
Yeah.
the amount of money in
Yeah.
comparison isn't a lot.
And we've done that before,
You
when
know.
we've gotten to the
Yeah.
budget part of it and we're saying, wow, we just can't do this, and so
Yeah.
then we
We
go
do
back
this
and
over
say,
this.
Which always
even though we
happens
were a
with
thumbs
coaching.
up on this,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to
But,
tax.
but Ramona, IBB is, an agenda item for discussion for, so that you and
Right.
Rob can update the board on what we've done so far. So that would
Right.
be the perfect opportunity to bring this part to the boards, if you're wanting input from them.
Yeah,
Would be-
I got it on my list.
Yeah, the perfect
Yeah.
time to bring that to them.
Yeah.
I guess my hope would just be that it's brought in, here's the language that we agree on, we're proposing this language, we're waiting for obviously the final cost to be part of it. So if there's questions on, I mean, we want that feedback on language ahead of time, but we wanna make sure we're all confident, every side of it, board, LEA, district side, we're confident in that language to propose to them first. I just don't, we'll get stuck just talking about
But
this
if
for
she's
2
talking
months.
about, I'm just making it clear that if she's talking about the money, it comes
Yeah.
back to the final
Final
part, if
proposal.
this 34,000 doesn't fit. But if we're talking about taking language back to the entire board, we have a lot of issues, and that's not the process, that's not the way IBB works. These 2 board members are delegated from the 5 board members to speak on their behalf. Because they are supposed to go back and say, we voted for this and we're in support of this, or if they're not, then then the board members or association should say, no, we can't have the discussion here, and then have the discussion and then you guys would be going back to your association, we'd be having 2 sets of meetings, it defeats the entire purpose.
It nullifies what we're doing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we're talking about 2 sets of meetings, but what I think is just an update, just like you guys give updates for everything else that you know, that you do, and I mean, like I said, we'll see, I'm still sideways,
Yeah.
Keep in mind,
you know?
we are 2 of the 5 board members. And we could get far enough afield that the other 3 would say, what are you guys doing? We're
Right.
not buying off of
And that's why we have to go back to our members and they'd say the same thing, and we've done that before. So I think it's good, just open discussion. I think my point was just, if we come to it from this table, you know, we've already did the work, so we go to it with, this is what we came up with. And then bring about a discussion or something.
What bogs down the process is if we come to a consensus and then each side goes back to their prospective people and brainstorm and come back with something completely different, that it just bogs the process down. So I think that's what Becky's trying to say.
Okay, so I guess we'll wait on that to see how that goes then in the.
That cost factor is added cost, that's not
Yes.
the cost of that laundry list you got up there.
Right, that's
The
just the
7
added
million.
cost.
The 7 million.
Just petty cash, Bob.
Okay.
But
so-
also what I'm hearing though is
And
we're
you're
okay
because you're
to
willing
move
to
on.
fundraise
So
that
that-
amount?
I don't.
Yeah, because we all had a thumbs up each sideways, we can move on to the
Yeah.
second.
Yeah, I'm good with that, we can do that.
Are you comfortable
Yeah,
with that?
yeah, the only thing I don't know is how the May is
Yeah.
hashed out.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what's the deciding factor on the may or may not?
That's when I referenced Dr. Pasley when we were talking about, because right now, in our negotiated agreement, we have stipends for overage pay for teachers. And so Dr. Pasley and Dr. Meyer and her team came up with, you know, there's a set of like 4 different statements that have to happen in that May
Yeah.
setting, that it's gotta be a conversation with the principal and the teacher to decide, okay, what's the issue with having 1 more student? Would you rather have a parapro? Do you want a stipend? What's the best for the district, the student, the teacher,
Right.
everything? And so, yeah, maybe there needs to be some language in there, a height or a asterisk or something that just lists those things, the steps that can happen.
And I think that would sort of make it clear for everybody too, but I'm fine with moving on, just like we came back this year with the whole, the SWD thing and the pay, the 8 pay, because it wasn't so clear, you know, from last year.
Right.
Oh.
Okay, this was the next thing, the 5, SWD 5 drop days. Our interest, recruit, retained SWD staff, case managers maintain compliance with IDEA, support SWD students, maintain parent satisfaction, be competitive with surrounding districts, maintain stability. So these are the brainstorms we had,
We had worked our way through 3 of the 5.
and so our brainstorms with these, put hard to fill in the salary schedule rather than SWD. So, where were we on going through these, Lisa?
So we had crossed out the 3 of the 5, so we still have needed to discuss or go through our standards for the stipend for the increased weighted caseload, and then the flat rate stipend included on the salary schedule. We just haven't finalized it.
Okay, so stipend for increased weighted caseload, is it legal? Yes, it's what we're currently doing,
Well, not,
right?
not for.
No, we're not doing weighted, but I mean,
We
we're
do
gonna
it
do a
for
stipend.
gen ed
Yeah.
teachers, yeah.
Does it positively impact students? I believe we went through this one last week though and said,
Yeah,
no,
you did.
because it could have that impression that, hey, I take on more kids and people may overload themselves. So I'm just,
That's right, cause
I
we
usually have a
talked
good
about,
memory
we talked about the requirements of the IEP stand regardless of how many kids.
of how many kids and that it could actually decrease
So you wanna
their
cross that
things.
one off?
Yeah, and logistically, I don't know who would determine that.
And it's such an easily debatable, like, no, this kid should be weighted here when you have him weighted here, like, I just think the debatability in that, it'll take out, I would take it out.
I think you're
Do
right.
you wanna
I think
write
we
these
did-
up there?
I think we did strike that
We did,
one
we struck
out
it.
in mine.
Okay, so we're on flat rate stipend included on salaries.
Should have
Nicole?
recorded you saying that, Lisa. I think you're right.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna cross this out so we can take a picture, since we didn't increase weighted
And I thought that flat rate, I mean, we did talk about that hard to fill on the job days, but I thought that flat rate was hard to fill for certain positions.
That we would identify yearly in the
Yeah,
negotiated agreement.
exactly. That's what I thought we came up with.
Did we vote? I don't-
We didn't.
No,
vote.
well, we didn't vote on anything last week, because remember we
Yeah,
weren't
no, that's
posted,
what it
so we
was.
agreed to steer clear of
Yeah, I think we're
any
actually
final
supposed to vote.
decision.
Everybody had given the thumbs up, but we couldn't vote.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know what that stipend amount is.
That's
what I
our
was
biggest
gonna
question.
Because you had mentioned that Post Falls is doing 5,000?
No, he kept
I heard 10.
totaling.
It was like 2,000, wasn't it?
I heard 10.
2,000 or 2,500, depends
My
on
wife
which
should be
one.
laughing
You had
right
one
now,
of
'cause
each.
me and numbers,
Yeah, you had texted.
Unless I write 'em down.
2 or 25.
If you see them on the scoreboard.
My wife
Our
does-
case managers read a $2,000 stipend out of leadership. Sites and SLPs receive 2,500.
Right, they are.
That's
That's
it.
interesting too, that their sites and SLPs
I have
receive
to
more.
understand, and sometimes it's really hard for me. Every
Yeah.
teacher, of this category would receive that stipend regardless of what their load is, or how many kids they have, or how hard they work, or whatever.
Recruitment, it's
Yeah,
hard
it's
to.
always-
So we're really keying on the hard to fill positions.
Yes.
Which we have.
And the burnout. That was the other part that we talked about.
Which may be more significant with somebody with a bigger caseload though, but still, it seems to be across the board.
Yeah, it's just,
For sure, I mean, you get, well, we just know you get the teachers, you know, working with the students with disabilities, and often they're in that position 4 or 5 years, and when a third grade teaching position shows up and they have
Sure.
that,
Right.
they bolt fast.
Mhm.
I mean, that is a reality, and that's been going on for many, many years. I just know
Or
it.
you don't have anybody coming.
Well, we lose them to other districts altogether.
yeah, I know of 2 right now that are looking to do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, and we've had an open position in Athol since the
Yeah.
beginning of the year that
Well, we
we
have-
had.
See, yeah, I really struggle when you come to an equitability question with other teachers.
But those teachers could apply for this job and get that stipend. If they,
They can.
I mean, honestly, I'm
Yeah.
sort of this is one I sort of agree with them. I think that for the SPED, for the student disability, that's really sort of tough. And if those teachers say, I think it's unfair, well, you can certainly go get your special education credential and you can go get that stipend.
Yeah.
I will tell you too, I don't know
I'm
if you'll
sorry,
find
Bob,
a
that's-
teacher
they,
that'll
they would go, no, I'd rather not.
Our students with behaviors, that population has just been rapidly growing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just out,
Yep.
it's just out of this
Well,
world
it's
and,
not.
and, yeah, and it's just, I mean, like I said, we already have several SWD teacher positions open.
14.
And it is really super hard to recruit somebody that has those.
think,
So
I don't
from a
think you'll
recruiting
find.
standpoint though, I mean, you can approach that differently, you can approach that with sign-on bonus or some other
Sure.
type of thing.
Sure, but we also
But
wanna
in
maintain.
terms of retention, that's a different
Yeah,
animal.
I think that's where it's.
And I think what you said, if you label it as a hard to fill, then going back to what Brian said, if people gripe, they can say, well, this is classified as hard to fill. You're more than welcome to apply. In fact, please do, we need you.
Because it's hard to fill.
Last week, I was the one that had suggested changing it to a hard to fill as a stipend at the bottom, and I was thinking about it during the week. And I don't wanna make it super complicated, but to speak to Bob's equity issue, there probably should be some matrix we can make, some calibration that we can attach to that, so that the math teacher who says, we had a hard time, but why isn't that one also? So there needs to be some sort of functional, like, so it can even be as simple as if you have so many positions go unfilled in that particular category for long enough, but we should probably have some sort of a metric. If we call it hard to fill, because SWD isn't the only one that's hard to fill. It's certainly the most brutal one to fill.
I guess if I'm.
So we should put a metric to it, I think. Then there can't be an argument.
Do you have a brainstorm for that so we can put it up?
For the metric, I
Yeah.
do not. Because my gut is
So add
that you
metric.
folks at the DO see, because you do more of you're involved in all the hiring, my guess is you know a better metric or set of metrics for what you see about why those
Do you
are
have a
much more.
suggestion on that?
But you know what I'm saying about like how many positions sit open, unfilled for so many months, or that sort of a thing. It can be as simple of a metric as that.
John, you can't come to the table with suggested and no solution.
I just, I don't know, I don't.
Am I fired?
That's my
Can I go, please?
But there was a thought I had to take care of the equity issue, because Bob's point to equity could fall even outside of, you know.
Well, one of the things you have to, I listen to my son talk about this all the time. Other classroom teachers get loaded with some of this stuff too. I mean, they're involved in IEP meetings and, you know, the handicapped kid who comes in and requires extra help and all this kind of stuff. So it's really a difficult thing to balance in my mind.
I so respect that, but I also go, I don't know that I've talked to a single teacher that doesn't go, our SWD staff deserves more. And I don't even
ever
know
want
that
that job.
for them. Yeah, and I haven't heard anybody that goes complaints. We have these things built in. I mean, you have caseloads right now for our elementary classrooms that they get overages, but our SWD teachers don't have a caseload overage, so there's already an inequity there. To me too, and I really like the hard to fill, but I also don't like it because part of the thing, and we've come to the table with it every single year, is how do we make these SWD teachers know that we're valuing what they do? When their kid misbehaves, they don't call us as a classroom teacher, they call the SWD teacher during their prep and during their lunch. And the parent calls the SWD teacher first because they have a relationship over multiple years. They have to comply and have to have those things. Teachers do have a little bit more flexibility in saying, I apologize, I'm already off contract if they wanted to. Ours don't because we never would. But there's not the legal compliance piece behind it, that those SWD teachers have to make sure that that meeting happens. So I just go to, I'm like, I don't think it's inequitable. I think we already have things for teachers. We're already supporting them in different ways. I think you have to.
Well, and definitely they're strapped with more legal requirements
Oh my
than
gosh,
your
it's
average
a
teacher.
scary-
And
Yeah, I don't mean to make it
ramifications.
sound like I'm unsympathetic.
No, not at all.
Folks, I'm sympathetic to all teachers.
I just have good pitch right there, so that's good. No, but I'm like,
So
I
do
hear
you
what
have a
you're saying, I don't
So
think
back
it's
to the, do you have a brainstorm for that then, Laura?
No,
that
I
you-
think the, flat rate
Okay.
stipend, and
Okay.
that it's,
Bob, did this brainstorm meet your need, hard to fill stipend with metrics attached? Looks like Lisa came up with 2, number of all authorizations every 2 years, and
Over the last 2 years.
over the last 2 years, and then number of unfilled positions. Does that meet your need,
Yeah,
Bob?
I think it does, but I'd like to revisit what John suggested, and that is that there are other teaching situations that are also hard to fill where this might apply.
so that's what they're saying is utilize
And-
those 2 metrics to, I
identify.
And so then
those.
maybe even math or English could fall in, maybe not this year,
Key
maybe
or
in
health.
3 years, right.
Well,
Social
sometimes,
studies.
no, that's what.
Music is.
We're being
But,
facetious.
you know, sometimes music, sometimes, something like home ec,
Definitely
yeah.
music
that
and
kind of
band,
stuff
high
is
school music
hard to
and
fill.
band.
Yeah.
I'm worried about that.
How many other districts do something like this, a stipend or a flat rate?
I'll
Other
ask
than
Post
Post.
Falls, but that was Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene does the 2,500.
2,000 for SWD teachers and 2,500 for school sites.
And we
Because that's
also
a
needed to
competitive
determine if we were including
team.
psychs and SLPs.
I'll
Because
text Dina
that
right
was our
now.
other question on this. I had assumed yes, but because we
So
also had school
your
psychs
thinking
and
is if we pay these teachers more, they won't get tired and wanna quit?
No,
No,
when
it's
they
just
sleep,
because
they're
they say-
sleeping on a pillow of money.
You
When
can
they're
just stick
tired.
around for the
People
next 6
respond to
months.
incentives in positive ways.
Positive-based interventions.
Economic principle number 4.
I would much rather try to hire a math and science teacher versus an SWD.
Sure, yeah, to be sure.
And the problem is it's a federal requirement for IEPs, so we have to have them. I mean, it's just.
It's a scary scenario without those units.
We really have two problems, but we're trying to solve it with one piece of work.
With the recruiting and retaining.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing is retention. If they're gonna leave, they go to another district not for an SWD position. They don't go and say, okay, I'm gonna go to Post Falls SWD instead of Lakeland SWD, unless our stipend's a whole lot bigger than some of these, but I think we're recruiting them.
It's almost gonna be, it'd have to be, this longitudinal study, we put it
So,
into effect. see
Do
what
we do a
happens.
budgetary sort of guess here at this point? I'm new to this. Do we make a budgetary guess for any budgetary impact?
How many,
But how many people fall into the
That
category?
one's you.
And then times what would be a guestimated stipend, and then that gives you a total.
Thought we were at about 20 SWD teachers.
Did we say 23? Did we say 20?
and then are we,
Did we say 23 SWD?
Yeah.
23.
That's just case managers, that's not SLPs.
Right, we're just saying, well,
Oh, yeah, what are you saying?
I thought we were just saying case managers.
That's what I thought too, but Laura asked the question.
I guess, I asked that question, that's a, I don't know.
I guess I would tell you our biggest need right now, meeting her metrics that Lisa put up there, would be case managers. That would fit the highest number of all auths and the highest number of unfilled positions across the board is our SWD.
Running away with it.
Yes, is the case manager.
So 23 times 2 is 46,000. I mean, quick math,
Yeah.
right? Rough budgetary impact.
Yeah, just keep working on it, you won't be any money for salaries.
Oh,
So
we get down to that
we
point,
keep
that's
a
when it
running
starts
total and then we
shuffling.
start, yeah, that's when the big decision.
Just brought in the wild card.
I gotta
Come on.
I gotta get
You're like, I'm just waiting for it
He's
to
like,
do
why
it."
don't we go back to when we just did 5 things?
Can't we just come back and
So is that the number, 1,500, did I hear?
He's already cut it down.
For,
Somebody didn't like the drop
I
rate.
know, but I'm just trying to get some comparison, if it's a flat stipend compared to the original drop figures, if you wanted to.
So the drop days would be 34,700 and the pure stipend is 40, what'd you say?
If you matched Coeur d'Alene's number of 2,000, and the guesstimate, or probably not a guesstimate, it's 23, it's 46,000.
Okay, so we're not gonna, remember we're putting the money on the list, which, Brooke, are you keeping the money list this year, or is Rebecca, we need to have Rebecca do that?
For right now, some of that would be
There's a money list?
covered by federal dollars. Some of it would be.
Well, we'll do it afterwards.
IDEA, because we have
need to
teachers
start,
on
because we have
IDEA,
the
so
extracurricular, we need to start
The
putting that
bonus
on,
would
what
go.
Brooke used to do, but we'll have
those
to
teachers get
do a
exposed to
spreadsheet
it.
and then-
As long as that grant keeps going,
Yeah.
it could absorb that, so it's not all
Did you
paid
share the
in
one
the
from
general
last year you
fund.
had done?
That's all.
So sources of funding could be helpful. Gotcha.
That
You should
might
keep
be
it
just, we
running.
should make sure that it's not on the, you know, like, so that's final number as well.
So we would add in that
Federal government's been on a big
It's
big
a
race.
whole different
spree here for
package.
government.
Yeah, this is
Call
all
spreadsheet
different.
and then-
Right, right.
It does take.
It's more of the same, it's the same thing.
Well, this is.
Every person there. What is that?
Okay.
You've already given the thumbs up, right?
Like funding they want.
I don't, we didn't vote.
No.
So, we couldn't vote last time.
Still gets there.
Okay.
To an extent. It always does.
We're gonna go through these last three because, there's some that got off last week. These got taken off, but we have this stipend for weighted caseload, flat rate, and now this hard to fill with the metrics attached, and those are the two metrics. We've already gone through the standards on the first two. Do we wanna go through
We
the?
did it on this one we crossed off last time, we
Okay.
just didn't cross it off because it wasn't, logistically feasible.
So let's go through the standards for these two, and then we'll decide what, and Rebecca will put whatever the money was gonna be on that list.
So flat rate, is it legal? Yes.
Yep.
Does it positively impact students? Having actual SDE teachers does. Anybody? Debatable? Yes. Does it meet our interests? It meets recruiting. I heard questionable on the retention, but I think it still retains them to stay for that money. Because when you leave and go back to your regular classroom, you're not keeping that stipend, so you are taking a pay cut to leave.
Doesn't drive them away anyways.
Yeah, it doesn't earn the way. Is it equitable and logistically feasible?
It's equitable if you have the breakdown,
Metric.
yeah.
We're on the middle one, the flat rate.
We're just on,
So do you think it's not equitable?
if we're calling it a hard to fill, if we're saying it's an SWD stipend, it's just an SWD. If it's a hard to fill stipend, now you're looking at a different kind of equitability.
So do you wanna take that one off, it's not equitable, because of other positions?
Well, in the middle one, the one we're talking about, hard to fill isn't defined.
That's not
That's the
defined.
problem with it, is it's not defined.
So are those two different brainstorms that
So
one
you're
is
saying it's not
identified as a hard?
understandable?
Right, but it is understandable, it's not hashed out.
It's
It
a
is
flat
in the
rate
third
for
one, but
us
it's
to
not on the
be,
second one.
not for
So it might not
everyone.
be equitable because
So let's cross out the
hard to
middle
fill
one,
is
because-
undefined. What does that mean?
And I just threw the.
Right, no, exactly, and with a
Something
metric,
else.
it's possible.
Alright, so restarting, is it legal?
Yep.
Yes. Is it positively impact students? Yes. Does it meet our interests? Yes. Is it equitable and logistically feasible? I think most likely, and I think that would be a have to come back to every year to discuss those, what are the hard to fill.
Mhm.
And then I think it's a team saying, we've looked at metrics, here's our rationale and reasoning why. Alright, can the budget support it? I heard you say yes.
He says yes.
Yeah.
It
As
goes on
long-
the list, it can, it's
There's
what you
always
choose.
an
to.
You know, as long as we.
Mr. Wallace,
It
we give
can-
this one over here and come in with extra pots of money for it, so.
It can, we play the budget game at the very end too.
When you say we get, Brian, you say you get federal dollars too for that?
Right now we do.
Yeah. if the
So
very
as long as
end
that
is-
stays about the same as it has for many, many years, but you never know, I guess. Right now, I mean, that's what we're using it doesn't have anything to do with the ESSER dollars or anything like that. We are using our federal special education dollars for teachers' salaries.
Mhm.
So if they have like their master's stipend, that goes along with
Right.
that. If they have another stipend that was for, obviously coaching and stuff, it doesn't, but you know what I mean. So this would follow in line with that if they happen to be one of the teachers that are on that grant.
We do the same thing with title.
Yeah.
It's title funded, this stipends come out of title.
So it's possible to pull some of these stipends out of a pot of money that is not the general fund.
Correct.
It's, okay, so that's a yes.
That's
Is it understandable? I think we write the language, everybody gets it, it's clear. Does it improve relationships? Oh my gosh, your SWD teachers would cry this year if we finally got language to something, positively cry.
But it's not gonna be geared directly at them, so I think it is, expedient that we define hard to fill.
That we would put,
Yeah.
with this year's decision would be that it's SWD.
Yeah.
And I think even putting the language,
SLPs,
Yep.
SWD, SLPs. I don't know about, psych.
I think that's, I heard other people say not SLPs, I heard other people say only SWD caseloads. So that's a
Sorry,
metric then thing that we would have to come back to next week, is saying, are we adding?
Can I make a
SLP
suggestion
or-
about the metrics?
Go.
Would it be, helpful to this team if maybe, when we come back on Monday next week, Dr. Meyer, Brooke and I kinda look at what we've
What are the
had,
trends?
what are our trends, and put some, suggestions for the metrics, and then we can tonight agree to it in
So the concept,
and then when we come back together, we can bring the more concrete metrics.
Yes. Yep. So is it improve relationships? Yes. Is it ratifiable and board approvable? Yes. Alright. So voting on it, on the concept of it, and then we'll get the logistics language and the identifiable SW, what we're doing.
Okay, yeah, well, thumbs up.
Sorry, I just am controlling, so I start.
There is some law language on the Law Insider, with some actual hard to fill positions and definitions of the actual hard to fill language.
Does it have metrics in it?
It does, it says currently the positions are assigned, where there's required credentials, math, science, special ed, mild, moderate, severe, Spanish, psych, and speech language pathologists. And the hard to fill position is typically either 6 months of the position being posted, or, applications, that were received where the applicant is either not qualified, doesn't respond,
Captured it.
blah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
For a minute, is
But
there?
I think we should take that language out of the law since it's right there.
Yeah,
My
you bet.
question-
What ADAPA is it?
No, it's Law Insider, where other school districts have done the same thing, so this has been
Well,
their.
And I know that previously,
But you have to be,
That's excellent, I think.
you have to be clear that, is it a hiring bonus, or is it for all those positions? I mean, that's, make
it
sure
a
that we're all
continuation?
clear on the same page. Because
No,
some of
it's a-
those things are specifically for a hiring bonus. And we wanna make, is that what we're doing, or no?
no.
I didn't think so,
No.
so I
Well-
just wanna make sure that was clear.
And with some of that language previously, and still even, some of those are identified for people that are going to school to get degrees as well. You can use that to qualify for different student grants, student loans, and repayment stuff. So we wanna make sure that even if we take it from law, we may not want to reference just, like, we need to say this is what our intent is with it, this is what we have identified for our purpose, so that it's not a confusion of we're trying to align. We just have to look, I think using
Yeah,
that
it's
to
just have examples
influence,
of what
yeah,
other
examples
school
of it.
districts have done to.
Hard to fill for Lakeland
For Lakeland.
positions.
Right.
Yeah, just so that you Brooke can.
I'm assuming to Ryan's point though, that in your recruiting, obviously you recruit a teacher at an X level of salary, wherever they land, plus the stipend, and you can use that in the recruiting
Right.
information.
And it's an ongoing
To
stipend.
retain them, you just say, remember, if you don't teach third grade, you don't get this.
Yeah.
stipend.
Exactly.
It's not really a sign-on bonus, but it's a stipend.
It's a stipend.
It's better than
Incentive.
Yeah.
Do you want me to send this to you and
Which
Brooke,
is-
and you guys can get it?
I'm pretty sure.
So-
How long does that go on?
So we are thumbs up on
Or,
that, we have
if
a
possible,
session.
if we have metrics attached,
Brooke-
something becomes no longer.
Yeah, we were-
Yeah.
Yeah.
In
Brooke
which
and
case,
I
it could fall up
can
and.
work on the language,
The stipend schedule.
Perfect.
and then if we can include in the language, like,
You know.
when we're gonna determine for the year what the hard to fill positions are, so that that's all really
They're
clear.
gonna delegate.
Hopefully.
That went away.
Okay, just, next, does anybody have anything that's clicking out that they wanna do, clear understanding before and after? You guys haven't met with insurance yet, right? Have you met with the insurance people yet?
Not informally, but they have, we have The State Benefit Council came out, I think it's April 15th or 16th, when they're gonna come out with the rates. They haven't come out yet, so they didn't have that information.
Okay, so
They're-
let's wait on that.
Yeah, I think we need to wait. They're gonna look at, I mean, there are all the new discretionary dollars that was passed by this last legislative session. There's a bump in discretionary, but it's all allocated, what they say, to go towards medical benefits. So really, there's no increase, so we didn't have an increase in any other cost, but medical for discretionary, exactly the way they did it. So if we wanna go with the intent of that then we will have some extra dollars that we can take a look at enhancing our medical benefits or covering maybe dependents, and the Murray Group is gonna look at options.
Are you guys gonna have that subcommittee, the insurance team, come back with the Murray Group to kinda give?
Yeah, we'll see how much time we have. I mean, it's May 15th, we'll get the information and go from there. Yeah.
I guess my question, looking at next week, we have that information coming out. Next Tuesday is the road show. Do we not meet next week, have those kinds of things, get the road show done, have the insurance committee?
Well, let's not decide yet, we've only have 40 minutes, so we're really going.
We got 9.
Yeah, so change to a daily pay, somebody just, when you have something you think is gonna be good to do. Oh, I thought it was a 7.
That's why I was asking, sorry.
Retain teachers, okay, well, let's just do one real quick then, so we can try to get, either change daily pay for working through lunch or prep, retain teachers if you sign your contract a month early, receive an incentive payable, leave of absence, change NA language to teachers will notify district they are coming back by April.
No.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do you wanna talk about the issue behind the request?
well, yeah, we have to do an issue in the so the issue is we wanna know earlier for staff planning.
Rebecca, can I erase this?
Yep, I got the pictures.
So right here, it says the teacher shall notify the superintendent running by May 1st. We've run into the issue where it's hard for staffing, because if we don't post a position, we're losing teachers already. We've lost a few teachers to Post Falls, and we're starting to lose teachers to Coeur d'Alene because people we don't know on positions. We're waiting on, people coming back and on reach going, so Brooke was hoping that we could change this to April 1st. So that we would know by April 1st, because most of them would know by then. So our issue is staffing, and our interests are,
Planning for the next year,
yeah.
hiring the best teachers.
Not to retain the teachers that you currently have.
Would the intent be to keep that date for, subsection A there, where if they decide that they don't, would we change that as well?
Yeah. Oh, the application has to be turned in before May 1st?
Yeah, I don't think we changed that
I
one.
don't think you changed that one.
Yeah, as long as you know by April.
Go ahead, Connie.
Well, it's two different issues, right? The
Yeah.
application to leave,
But that one
and
has
then
not
whether
been
they're
an
going to
issue.
return or not.
That one hasn't been, the A hasn't been an issue on the application only. At least, do you think it was last year, Ramona? You've had a few since you've been here. Do you think the May 1st of giving an application to leave has been an issue?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, that does sort of, kind of is pretty close to look for
Mm-hmm.
other teachers, or whatever position it is, I guess. But wasn't it an LOA that was on our list? I was just trying to go back and see.
They are, after 2 years, or 1 year, they're not on there.
Oh, they're not coming back?
No.
Okay.
But we're still waiting on a couple. Brooke, are you okay with keeping the application by May 1st? Has that been an issue?
Yeah, it hasn't been an issue because, I mean, no.
Okay. Alright, so what about this, the teacher shall notify the superintendent in writing by, what's this, what's in our brainstorm is April 1st, are there any other brainstorms for that?
Is that early enough?
It really gets in the meat of when the openings are happening.
Yeah, the recruiting season is early spring on.
Mm-hmm.
So another brainstorm could be that we change it from May 1st to March 1st.
Yeah.
I'd like to go for all 12 months. We could just put up like then February 1st as an option.
Is this the humor part?
You're not ready to go to 7.
Is there a gray area for emergency situations after April 1st or May 1st?
For applying before, but
Well,
not for.
if the superintendent of the board, why, it says there is no written notice he or she right to employment. It doesn't say that they're fired, it just says their right to employment.
I'm just saying, what if something happens after, there's a illness in the family where that teacher has to go back and take care of somebody for a year, and they find out May 15th.
I think that you've had situations where people have applied for it after May 1st, and then it's been a discussion with the board and the superintendent, just like when they're applying to ask to get out of their contract of, can we support it? Do we have the staffing to come in? Like,
Yeah.
I know that that's happened when people have had job offers for things after May 1st, and our district office and our board at any of those times have been very
Very
flexible
good.
on looking, same thing kind of with the coaching, we've always handled it with case by case.
Did you
And this-
wanna, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ramona.
I was just saying, this is a leave of absence, so
Yeah.
it is their intent to return, so it's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
they're.
It's not the contract.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, didn't you wanna put in, exceptions to this date may be considered on a case-by-case basis, or we don't have to, I'm just saying, sometimes that is in other areas.
I don't think we need to do that.
Okay, all right,
And again, his or her right to employment shall be vacated, just means they've lost the right for a guaranteed return. It's not that the superintendent and the board couldn't listen to a hardship case, right? That doesn't preclude that from happening,
Yeah,
the way it's worded.
Yeah.
all right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I like
There you
that,
go.
thank you.
Yeah.
And it
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
also allows them if they don't give us a notification and they vacate their right to employment, they could apply for an open position
Right.
if they miss the window.
Because they vacated the
They
right,
miss-
not,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Right.
well, basically at this point, there's April 1st, March 1st or April 1st. So instead of let's just go through the standards for all of them, both of them, and then we'll just vote on which one people want. Is it legal? Yeah. Positively impact students? Meet our interests? Equitable and logistically feasible? Budget can support it. Is it understandable? Does it improve relationships? With current staff, it does. And I think if people leave and they know they have a date, that it's fine, it's not gonna burn any bridges. Is it ratifiable?
I'm like, cause I don't see another spot to make a pitch for or against one. The March 1st feels early for me if we're thinking about, these are still our people, they've been on a leave, and what are those reasons? The only reason that I think through this is because I know multiple people that we've had in the past have left and gone and worked for like a State Department job for a year, or as a coach for a year. A lot of those are decided upon about that same time too. They're looking to find out, do I have a returning contract in that role? Do I not have a returning contract in that role? And so March 1st to me, knowing that is a little early, that they're not getting the answer on some of that. And so are we pushing them to make a decision prior then? I think April 1st is still earlier. It's still moving it up. It still gives us time to know. I just think March 1st is kind of rushing them as well in those cases, just because I'm only thinking of those where it's those State Department things that they've done, and sometimes even the State Department is still wavering in August, but asking them to finish in April would be a little bit more.
So a
I vote for
compromise
April.
would be March 15th.
Beware the eyes of March.
Okay, so right now, because we're at the time and that's one of our ground rules, We're gonna vote on April 1st, because it passed both of them passed all the standards, so right now April 1st is first on the board. Whoever wants April 1st, put a thumbs up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, okay, that's 5 for that one, Rebecca. Who wants March 1st? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's so nice that we have Juan's team.
Compromise.
It's March 15th.
I agree, March
Except you're going
15th.
into spring break, so why do you need it before spring break?
You
No
can't
one's
have
gonna make those
everything.
calls that
People are
time.
gonna have to make a decision and move on. That's
When was the first time that you started really hearing about people wanting to transfer or needing to know?
Who
Let's
posts
say
their
Patty's
jobs
Day.
first and what day
March
is that?
17th.
Well, we've lost
I actually do it March
teachers.
17th.
Already 2 people to post calls.
Post
We've already
calls
done.
because they're
St.
hiring.
Patrick's
Because
Day.
it's a holiday, it's easier.
And I
to
already
remember.
have.
So that you
like,
can
Well,
make
it's
that
April.
decision as
What,
you're
right?
joining the run beer.
I will change my vote.
March 15th,
Do you
I'll
want,
compromise.
Bob wants to put up March 15th. So let's, anyone who's in favor of March 15th, thumbs up.
Sure. Just to get by.
Okay, unanimous for March
That's the only
15th.
win
Good
you
boy,
get.
Bob.
That's the only win you get.
That,
We're in.
For next
Careful,
year.
it's a long season.
That was
We got a lot
done
more
in
to
10
win.
minutes. Can we keep note of that and
Yeah.
try to beat ourselves next time?
Okay, go ahead,
I would
Joyce.
like to propose that next time we meet, that we can take care of all this other like non-money type issues. And maybe stay till 7 o'clock if we need to next week, if you guys are okay with that, or, and go from there. That way we can, then that way we can focus on money after.
Brian's not gonna wanna stay for that.
It's
Um,
just
It's
30
not
minutes.
money. No.
Can I leave?
Yeah, we get to, that means Becky and I get to vote.
That means,
for you.
yeah, that means you get signed up for all the work for the week.
That is his answer.
I'll
That's
take care of all the
important.
budget
You can
questions.
pre-register all your answers.
That's right.
Just leave, we'll put
I
a
would
little cut
propose
of it
that
up there.
you
with
Take
it.
a picture of it.
I have the
organize
notebook.
this, because it's, right now it's, and we have like, this is money issues that we're gonna wait, and we would organize this, cause it's, okay.
It's a little
Jason,
scattered.
Jason and I are gonna organize this, so it's more like, these are issues that don't take the money, and these are issues that are